Hi, welcome to FilmSauce. I'm FilmSauce, and in this Sauce video, I'm continuing my Friday the 13th tradition by doing Friday the 13th Part 2. And yes, it feels ridiculous releasing a horror movie video in the middle of Christmas season. But hey, I can't deny the tradition. Directed by Steve Miner, the only director to direct 2 Friday films, and written by Ron Kurz, Friday the 13th Part 2 is a sequel to the first one, if you couldn't tell. But importantly, this movie introduces Jason Voorhees as the killer, with his iconic potato sack mask that is celebrated to this day. Throughout this film, I also reward on negate source points, and at the end of this video, I'll tally up those points to see how saucy this movie really is. But now, eat some potatoes out of a potato sack and relax to FilmSauce Friday the 13th Part 2. The film starts off with some kid singing the hit song Itsy Bitsy Spider, but the kid leaves the frame, leaving room for Jason Voorhees to be the star, where in this scene he is played for the first and only time by a woman, Ellen Luter, the film's costume designer, while in the rest of the film Jason was played by Warrington Gillette and Steve Dash. Jason walks down the street to a house where inside there is the final girl of the last film, Alice, who is asleep, dreaming of the previous film's events for just way too long. Alicia is still played by Adrienne King, who, after the release of the original 1980 film, was stalked by an obsessed fan, and eventually there was a gun against her head. Thankfully, Adrienne King did survive having talked down the stalker, but after Friday 2, she decided to retire from acting. Once the recap of the last film events are finished, Alice wakes up and does some unscripted things. Seriously, they didn't give Adrienne King a script, so for a short while she just wanders around until she ends up in the kitchen to make some tea. Alice opens the kitchen door, finding Pamela Voorhees' head, and Jason now sneaks up behind her, stabbing an ice pick into her temple. Adrienne King actually didn't know Alice was going to die. She found out on set, and she found out the whole film had already been filmed. Oh, and to continue the beatdown on Adrienne King, the ice pick prop stabbed into a temple didn't retract. Ouch. I feel bad for this woman. Now we have an explosive title card, followed by the credits. We now open to the town near Crystal Lake, where we meet Jeff, played by Bill Randolph, and Sandra, played by Marta Kober, who was in the hit movie Neon Maniacs. The couple are getting directions when they are confronted by the one and only Crazy Ralph, who leaves after being classic Ralph.
You're all doomed. You're all doomed.
The couple's car is now getting towed, and they chase the tow truck down, but really, the towing was just a prank by their friend Ted, played by Stuart Charno, who joins the couple on the road to camp. Going to camp, the road is blocked by a branch, and instead of helping the men move the branch, Sandra wanders off, where she finds an old sign which used to belong to Camp Crystal Lake, the place from the last movie. But Ted refuses to stay around Camp Blood and talk about it, so the three drive away. We are finally at camp, where there is a camp counselor meeting headed by Paul, played by John Fury. But who cares about this boring counselor meeting, because the final girl, Ginny, played by Amy Steele, is coming into town, driving past Crazy Ralph. Paul and Ginny show off how they're a fun couple, and set up a few things, like Ginny's car being garbage, and that Ginny is into child psychology. It is now late at night, and Paul explains the legend of Jason around the campfire. And obviously the idea to have Jason as the killer was a great idea, judging by how he's one of the most iconic characters in not just horror, but fiction. And despite the fact that Sean S. Cunningham and Tom Savini thought it was a bad idea to have Jason as the killer, because he died in the first film, it was a good idea, judging by present day. So plus 3 source points for the icon that is Jason, who's in my potentially hot take better than Michael Myers. Like, at least Jason didn't get beat up by Corey.
And Jason hasn't looked like an alien, and he's gone to space.
Now all the counsellors chill out, and I guess I should introduce the rest of the important counsellors. This is Terry, played by Kirsten Baker. She owns a dog called Muffin, is basically the sexy chick of the movie. This is Scott, played by Russell Todd, and he is a very horny guy and into Terry, and very creepy. This is Mark, played by the late Tom McBride, who's in a wheelchair, but he is the jewel of the eye for our next character, Vicky, played by Lauren Mary Taylor, who's into Mark and great with the pickup lines.
What do you want to play for?
Position.
So Crazy Ralph is walking around camp, seeing Ginny changing, and hey, final girls are not supposed to change. Final girls should do anything sexual until it's meta and funny and scream. Anyway, Friday the 13th Part 2 continues the trend of killing characters from the previous film when Crazy Ralph is strangled. Very sad. He should have lasted the whole series and gone to Manhattan, space, and hell with Jason. It is now the next day and Sandra convinces Jeff to join her in exploring the abandoned site of Camp Blood. And they find some mangled up remains of what looks like Muffin, who we saw walk up to Jason's leg before. But since Camp Blood has no trespassing policy, a police officer catches the two. The police officer is played by Jack Marks, who now confronts Paul, talk about how he wants to keep the area of Crystal Lake quiet. The cop, on his way out to get donuts or something, sees Jason run across the road into Camp Blood. So the cop follows, where he finds the tattered shack, and he walks inside to see something off screen. And once discovering this thing off screen, the cop is immediately hacked with a hammer, and we cut to the next Paul scene. Now announces there will be a trip to town for the counsellors. The counsellors I mentioned before stay behind. Now that everyone has gone partying, you know what your average girl does in a slasher flick, they skinny dip. So Terry goes skinny dipping and the horny guy Scott decides to steal Terry's clothes because it's funny. But he's caught in a snare, so Terry leaves to find a knife to cut him down. But while she's gone, his throat is slit. Once Terry comes back, she finds Scott dead, screaming, and dies off camera. Yeah, the MPAA heavily cut down the Friday franchise, which made around a minute removed from the final cut of the film of Friday 2. Very sad, because the special effects look like they could have been great. Tom Savini did not return for the sequel, but for the special effects they originally hired Stan Winston. The guy did special effects for the likes of Jurassic Park and Predator. But Stan Winston had scheduling conflicts, so the reins of special effects went to Carl Fullerton, who did work on The Godfather Part 3 and Silence of the Lambs. With the partygoers in town, Ginny talks to Paul and Ted about the legend that is Jason, questioning what it would be like if he was alive today. And yeah, she was right when she called him a psychopath. Back to camp, Sandra and Jeff feeling a bit horny, so they go upstairs while Vicky flirts with Mark, and it turns out Vicky's actor Lauren Marie Taylor actually had a crush on Tom McBride, unaware that Tom was actually homosexual. But Vicky and Mark decide to do what Sandra and Jeff are doing right now. So Vicky leaves to freshen up, and she takes so long that Mark goes outside to look for her, and he gets machete in the face, and he falls down some stairs in a really cool kill. Meanwhile, Sandra and Jeff are fucking, and Sandra's actress, Marta Koba, was actually underage for this scene, and the filmmakers only found this out after filming, which is just ridiculous. But Jason is here to end the underage sex scene by jamming a spear into the couple, which is an incredible, iconic kill, despite that most of the scene was cut and the filming of the scene sucked for actor Bill Randolph, who ended up having to sound some drugs into his mouth, making it bearable, but very questionable set. Now that basically all the counselors are dead that are at camp, Vicky goes to Sandra and Jeff's sex dungeon, where she finds Jason, and showcases her amazing scream. But sadly, she's cut down by Jason before we could get another epic scream. And now that everyone's dead, more fresh meat has to arrive, and that fresh meat is Paul and Ginny, who left the party early. And yes, Ted survives, staying at the party. Ginny finds the blood left over from the bed kill, so Paul and Ginny look around the cabin, where we have a scene that's possibly my favourite in the movie, where in the dark, Ginny realises Jason is in the room with them.
There's someone in this room.
Jason now attacks Paul and successfully beats Paul down, turning his attention to Ginny. And while it's basically the end of the film, I would like to say I'm happy that the problems in the first Friday were mainly fixed in this film, making the characters more enjoyable and etc. So +1 source point. Ginny runs around the house until she escapes through a window and enters her car. But remember what I said about her car being garbage? Well, you should have, because the car does not start and Jason attacks. But the power of a car door subdues him. Ginny runs down some more, reaching another car which is locked. So she is on the run again with Jason on her tail. Jason tracks Ginny down to a cabin where we see her hiding on the bed, but thankfully Jason doesn't notice, so he leaves until he looks back and sees the golden bath, which was either produced from Ginny or this rat. I hope it was the rat. I think it was Ginny. Ginny, thinking Jason left, exits her hiding spot when, Jason's on a chair for some reason, preparing to pitchfork her, but the chair breaks and he kind of falls goofily. Ginny, seeing her chance, grabs a chainsaw and attacks Jason. And this is the closest Jason has ever gotten to a chainsaw. Can he stop being depicted with one? Ginny finishes Jason off with some WWE chair move, and she goes on the move again. Ginny, on her run, stumbles upon Jason's shack, where she finds the Pamela shrine. Oh, I'm definitely rating this a 1-star in Airbnb. With Jason coming back to his shack, Ginny decides to use some of that child psychology she's majoring in by putting on Pamela's sweater, styling her hair a bit so she can roleplay as Jason's mum. Jason stops in his track when he sees Ginny, who turns into a returning Betsy Palmer, who talks Jason down, allowing to machete slice Jason. Never mind, he parries. But Paul is awake and here to save the day because somehow he found the shack. But Jason beats Paul down again, leaving Ginny to be the hero using a machete to hack Jason's shoulder, ending the climax. And I really enjoyed this tense chase, so +1 source point for that. Ginny and Paul, victorious, leave the shack and return back to camp. Are not safe, as they hear someone at the door. So Paul opens the door, ready to kill Jason, but it's not Jason, it's the cute little dog Muffin, who runs up to Ginny. However, we need that final jump scare as a maskless Jason smashes through the window, grabbing Ginny. But that might have been a dream, or maybe not. We viewers don't know. But in the morning, Ginny is being wheeled off into the ambulance, calling for Paul, asking where he is. It's insane to me that originally Ginny was actually supposed to die. But thankfully, producers decided someone needed to live, and they really liked Amy Steele. So Ginny lived. Hooray. And that was FilmSauce Friday the 13th Part 2. It does a good job fixing issues from the first film, and I and many others fans see it as one of the better films of the series. But how did it do in the source points? Friday the 13th Part 2 gained a total of 5 source points with no negations. So good job, buddy. You landed a total of 5 source points. So that was the video. Like, subscribe, comment, and maybe I'll see you again sometime. Goodbye.